From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here, and here's what's ahead. K-State's Vipan Kumar will go over the results of his recent herbicide field trial, which tested out a number of products for their effectiveness in controlling Palmer amaranth in post-harvest wheat stubble. Also today, K-State's Justin Waggoner will preview a special K-State webinar for you cow-calf producers coming up next week. It'll focus on herd management strategies amidst persistent drought. Today's Kansas Wheat Harvest Update features Extension Agricultural Agents Alan Baker of Wichita County and Craig Dinkel of the Midway Extension District. And further ahead with another Stop, Look, and Listen, K-State's Gus Vanderhoeven. All that right here on Agriculture Today.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Thanks for tuning in once more for another Agriculture Today. Good to have you with us. Well, on this first segment of today's edition, we'll look at an ongoing issue in weed control here in the state of Kansas and some answers that our guest has come up with in recent research. He's also conducting a survey of you producers on your herbicide management approaches and the weed problems that you're encountering routinely, and we'll talk about that a bit later. Vipan Kumar is with us. He is a weed scientist for K-State, based at the university's Agricultural Research Center at Hayes. Vipan, welcome to you once again, and we will talk of Palmer amaranth control in wheat stubble in particular as the harvest wraps up. And when we address the topic of Palmer amaranth, it strikes concern in the minds of many producers because of the resistance it's developed in recent years to our common herbicides.
Yes, that's correct, Eric, and it's good to be with you. As the folks have been wrapping up the wheat harvest, and we have been seeing our fields infested with the new flush of Palmer amaranth, especially with our recent rainfall we received over a couple of weeks. As you mentioned, resistance is a kind of issue for several years, and herbicide-resistant Palmer amaranth has really become a concern for folks around the state, especially in the central and western part of the state. Not only resistance to one herbicide mode of action, but multiple herbicide mode of action.
Beyond just glyphosate, which is...
Beyond glyphosate, we have been seeing more and more issues with our Group 2s, as well as our commonly used corn and sorghum herbicides like mesotrione as well as atrazine applied post. So it's not only glyphosate. Glyphosate resistance is quite common, as our recent survey indicates, but resistance to other chemistry has also been becoming more and more issues for Kansas folks.
And as we see post-harvest in Kansas, that Palmer amaranth can grow extraordinarily rapidly and become very difficult to control regardless.
It does. Actually, right now the conditions or the weather conditions are right for this weed species because it can grow very rapidly under these hot afternoons, and we have quite a bit of moisture in the ground. It can grow like a half an inch per day. So you can imagine while you are seeing Palmer under the wheat canopy and harvesting, and by the time you wrap up and think about spraying, those Palmer will be about a foot or 2 foot tall already in those stubbles. So I think our growers, they need to spray as early as possible after wheat harvest. And that's kind of challenging, but what we can do is probably harvest some of those wheat fields where the canopy is poor and harvest those wheat fields first and try to prioritize herbicide application in those fields as quickly as we can.
With that strategy in mind, tell us about the field study you conducted this past year, post-wheat harvest, near Hays, and looking at potential effective treatments against Palmer amaranth. You really had quite a laundry list of products examined.
Yes, we did this study last year. I looked at some of the options which we can go as a fallow ground, but I really wanted to screen all the alternative options which seems to be effective under that situation. So we took some programs, things like Gramoxone or Paraquat, which is again a contact type herbicide, and included some of those Gramoxone alone as well as Gramoxone tank mixed with some soil residual herbicides, things like Atrex, Atrazine, or Sencor, Valor, Spartan, Authority Supreme, or Panther MTZ. The idea of including some of those soil residual chemistry was to see if we spray that contact herbicide along with those soil residual herbicides, if that helps to prevent any further emergence or late emergence of any of those Palmer amaranth seedlings, and we don't have to spray again. Because normally what happens, folks, they spray after wheat harvest, and sometime if the moisture comes, they have to spray again, maybe 2 or 3 times. So the idea was to save those later application and just go with one time with those products. So in terms of programs, Gramoxone, as I mentioned, was one of those, and then we included Sharpen, which is a saflufenacyl, group 14. This is, again, also a group contact type chemistry, has a little residual activity. And we included some other soil residual chemistries with Sharpen, like Atrex, Sencor, or 2,4-D to enhance the activity of Sharpen. And then we had standard programs, what growers normally use, like Roundup by itself, Clarity, which is dicamba, 2,4-D, or a mixture of those 3. And then we had some Liberty-based programs, because Liberty has been used more and more after glyphosate resistance been in the picture. So we wanted to see if we mix Liberty with 2,4-D and Roundup or Roundup Clarity, how it does on Palmer amaranth when they are like 2 feet or 3 feet tall and they are under stress conditions, like they are producing seed heads already. So what will happen in terms of efficacy? And what we noticed that majority of those programs worked. They provided more than 88% control at 8 weeks after treatment. We also found with majority of those programs, we were able to reduce the seed bank or the seed production from those plots.
Significantly so.
Significantly, yes. It's more than 93% seed production was lost or reduced compared to the non-treated plots. So that was a success. If you see overall in our system, that's what we want. We want to reduce the seed bank so that we don't have to struggle this species in the next summer crop. So it was very promising results from last year, and we're going to replicate that study again this year, and probably going to put another site on a grower field where they have an issue of glyphosate-resistant Palmer amaranth, if I can find someone.
Excellent. But to the point, once again, you've this array of treatments, and by and large, each of them proving effective against Palmer amaranth, and that is highly encouraging news for producers.
They were, and one more thing I really like to emphasize, with those chemistries, with those programs, what we did was we used the maximum label use rate of those chemistries, and we included the full rate of adjuvants also. Adjuvants are very, very important at this time of the year when the Palmer amaranth or Kochia, they are kind of maturing, and later stage they are large size, and sometime under high temperature they are stress conditions. Those adjuvants really help those chemistries. So that's very, very critical to understand. If you're going to spray, use the higher spray volume with those applications.
Well, it's excellent work, and we might let folks know that it's detailed in an Agronomy e-Update newsletter article this past Friday's edition. Look for that at agronomy.ksu.edu. It summarizes the 2019 study on different herbicide programs for palmer amaranth control in post-harvest wheat stubble. Additionally, Vipan, we wanted to mention that you are, again, seeking input from producers about weed challenges overall by way of a special survey. Tell us about that.
Yes, it's a kind of the same idea behind understanding the overall picture of the state in terms of our weed challenges and weed management practices our folks have been following, especially producers and then our ag professionals. So the idea or the objective behind this survey is to kind of identify the knowledge gaps in terms of what we lack in terms of research areas or extension programs that we can develop in the futures to help our folks. So we really like to have some input from our ag professionals, including ag agents, crop consultants, or certified crop advisors, as well as producers across the state, to tell us about their production management practices, as well as weed problems and herbicide resistance weed issues. So it's a kind of little short survey, online survey. We have provided a link in the e-Update on June 19th. And this link is available on Hayes website, KSU Hayes website. And if somebody wants the hard copy, just call our office in Hayes, and we'll be happy to mail those hard copies as well.
Very well. Well, producers, take advantage of the opportunity to provide this information so Vipan and colleagues can come up with strategies and programs that will help you address your weed control issues in your crop production by way of this survey. Again, see it at the Agricultural Research Center at Hayes website, or you can see a link to it directly in the Agronomy e-Update newsletter dated the 19th of June at agronomy.ksu.edu. Vipan, good work all the way around. Thank you for telling us about all of this. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric.
He's a weed scientist at K-State's Agricultural Research Center at Hayes, Vipan Kumar. On this part of Agriculture Today, more coming your way shortly on the K-State Radio Network.
While many people know hunger is an issue in developing countries, it is also a problem in our own backyards. In 2010, 1 in 7 Kansans struggled to put adequate food on the table. 2 K-State research and extension programs are tackling this problem. The Family Nutrition Program and Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program reach thousands of Kansans in more than 70 counties. They learn how to eat healthy with a low budget. For more information about these programs, visit ksre.ksu.edu.
Agriculture Today returns now, and in so many parts of Kansas, as one would look at the latest drought monitor for the state, it is ultra dry, and now we're heading into the month of July, which promises to bring arid conditions, as it usually does as well. Therefore, the team of beef specialists with K-State Research and Extension will be putting on a special webinar coming up July the 9th to lend some thoughts to you producers on getting ahead of drought problems in your management, for cow-calf producers in particular. Joining us now, one of those who will be taking part, beef systems specialist Justin Waggoner, K-State Research and Extension. Well, the catalyst behind this is pretty clear-cut, Justin. We do have some extraordinarily dry conditions out there, and it's not limited to just one section of Kansas necessarily.
No, Eric, that's correct. My recent look at the drought monitor and the drought maps really indicates that about 60 to 70% of our counties in Kansas are experiencing some sort of drought conditions. Those would range all the way from those being exceptionally dry to, we have a few counties in the southwest corner where I'm at that would be at the D3 status. Some of those counties, Hamilton, Stanton, Stevens, Morton, et cetera, those would be the D3 counties. And so, as we look at really where we appear to be very dry, the outlook moving forward doesn't really look all that promising to us. The other side of that is we turn that calendar page and get into July and really what I would consider to be maybe on the downhill side of our grazing season, or at least approaching that. Some topics like early weaning and a few of those things are just something that we need to get producers to start to think about as we get ready for the fall.
So you gave us a teaser there on the subject matter that'll be covered in this webinar. We need to bring up once again, though, that the beef team will be lending some thoughts on various topics within the framework of this program, correct?
Yes, that's right, Eric. We're really trying to take, look at this from several different angles. Webinar is primarily going to involve myself, Sandy Johnson, and AJ Tarpoff. Some of the other topics we're going to be discussing will be what I call kind of the strategic reduction of grazing pressure, if you will, talking about some things like early pregnancy detection, how to find those females that are open. And then as we get into the early weaning side of things, that's one topic, talking about how we manage those calves, the nutrition of those calves, but also offer a little bit of information on drought supplementation. We know that, as I look at drought, I often think, drought is a game of grazing days, pounds of available forage, and cow body condition is really what we're trying to preserve. And so we'll talk about the cow supplementation side of things, how to, maybe put some extra additional condition on those cows through some tools like early weaning. Dr. Tarpoff's going to talk a little bit about the health management side of those early wean calves. A lot of times there's some concern with producers as we look at weaning those calves at anywhere from 100 to 120 days of age. We'll go through some of the data that's out there and just try to share some of our thoughts on how to do that. And really, especially with the market conditions that are out there, we need to be sensitive to the fact that we need those calves to perform if we do look at implementing some of these strategies.
Specifics on this program, this will take place over the noon hour on Thursday, July the 9th. And the intent of this is not only to share information on those topics, but to field questions and feedback from those participating and address their direct questions as they come up, Justin.
That's right, Eric. We'll have about 40 to 45 minutes of content, and then at different times through there, we'll have members of our entire beef team available for questions directly from producers via the webinar. So it's really just a good opportunity to take those as they come in from the producers.
So this will be a handy opportunity for you producers to be informed on some approaches you can take to deal with the drought as it might persist, and it's in the form of a webinar taking place on the 9th. How do folks participate? Is it relatively simple, Justin?
It is, Eric. The easiest way to access, when you ask the people register for the webinar, we have the details on how to do that posted at our ksubeef.org page in the Animal Science and Industry Department. And so if they want to just go to that link, that's probably the easiest way to find us and look for the drought preparedness for the cow-calf producer that's highlighted on there, and they should be able, all the details are there to register. And
you say you will take registrations right up to, quote, showtime, but you'd prefer folks save their spot as early as possible.
Yes, you can't get access to the webinar on the day of the event. However, it does take a little while for those to come through. So if you're planning on logging on at noon, you'll probably miss a few minutes of the content.
Very well. How to do it? Again, go to ksubeef.org, and it'll have the link to registering for this webinar and the details on being part of it. It is set for Thursday, July the 9th, and it will look at the impacts of drought and reduced forage availability on cow herds and cow herd management and adjustments that you producers can make in various aspects of nutrition, health, and so forth. So take advantage of that, and we wish you well with this, Justin. Many thanks.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.
Beef Systems Specialist Justin Waggoner, K-State Research and Extension. He'll be joined by K-State's Sandy Johnson and AJ Tarpoff conducting this webinar. Again, look into it, cow-calf producers, and make it part of your agenda for July the 9th, a week from tomorrow. ksubeef.org. Well, we are into that time of year when the combination of high temperatures, elevated humidity, low wind speeds, and high solar radiation put cattle and other livestock at risk for heat stress. Scarlett Higgins talks more here about tools that can be used to help mitigate that risk.
Veterinarians and animal scientists suggest there are steps ranchers, feeders, and dairymen can take to avoid livestock heat stress, provide relief, and ensure animal welfare. Effective management steps can include feeding schedules that avoid the internal heat buildup associated with normal digestion during the hottest part of the day. Increase airflow around confined areas by taking down winter windbreaks, including hay barriers. Provide shade if possible. The use of light-colored bedding, such as chopped hay or straw, will help reduce the heat load on animals. Wetting the surface of pens also can be effective. If wetting animals, use large droplets, not a fine mist. Saturate the hair for maximum cooling effect. The water should run off the animals, but try not to create mud that could increase humidity. Consider the use of additional water tanks, as summer water intake may exceed 10 gallons per head per day. To help livestock producers better prepare for extreme heat events, the Kansas Livestock Association website, KLA.org, has a link under the resource section to daily heat stress maps from the National Weather Service. These maps will help producers be aware of and understand weather conditions that could adversely affect livestock health. I'm Scarlett Higgins.
Thanks, Scarlett. And to add to that, don't forget that Animal Comfort Index that you can find on the Mesonet website out of the Weather Data Library here at K-State. It features a running account of those elements that bring heat stress to cattle and other stock at over 70 sites around the state of Kansas. It gives you a great idea of the stressful conditions that might be in place in your location, again, in real time. That can be found at mesonet.ksu.edu. And while we're talking informational resources ahead of the break, tell you as well about information that you can find at ksubeef.org, the location we cited earlier. There's a good write-up there on estimating water requirements for mature beef cows, which, of course, couldn't be more timely for this time of the year. It looks at the impacts of ambient temperature, how cow lactation would influence those requirements, forage and feed intake, and then a full breakdown of total daily water requirements for cows by body weight, figuring in those variables. As well, you'll find on that site K-State fact sheets on how water quality and source affect animal performance, and Waterers and Watering Systems, a handbook for livestock producers. And one further thing you'll see archived at that website, a video of the K-State Beef Team's recent webinar on managerial tools and tips in an uncertain climate and market. It featured advice for you beef cattle producers for making management decisions in light of not only the current weather patterns, but the market volatility that endures yet during the pandemic. So that would be worth a few moments of your viewing time as well. As you see fit, producers take full advantage of those resources at ksubeef.org. Now we'll step aside for a few moments. When we come back, today's Kansas Wheat Harvest Report. We'll have word on harvest results from West Central and Central Kansas. And again, standing by for his weekly comments, K-State's Gus Vanderhoeven. Still to come here on Agriculture Today, you're tuned to the K-State Radio Network. For 25 years, K-State Research and Extension's Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services has been providing a no-cost, confidential place to call in and visit with an agricultural lawyer. Our experts are available to help you producers handle legal and financial issues. Explore your options and generate solutions. Call us at 800-321-3276 or visit us online. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. You are listening to Agriculture Today, and welcome back. Eric Atkinson with you. And again, we're setting time aside every broadcast to get into the status of the wheat harvest in Kansas as we visit with county and district extension agricultural agents from around the state. On today's segment, we'll venture out to the west central part of Kansas and find out how harvest has progressed in Wichita County. Joining us now, Extension Agricultural Agent there, Alan Baker. And before we even talk numbers here, Alan, we need to set the table, if you will, by looking at the expectations for the wheat crop in Wichita County going in, because, as everybody more or less understands now, your part of the world has fought drought for quite a while.
That's correct, Eric. We've been in, the drought monitor had us in a moderate to severe drought, and it's been that way. We've been dry, going back into March. We didn't get much snow over the winter, and we just haven't had much for rains. We've got, over the past month and a half, we've had a few popcorn showers here and there. As of late, we've seen a few more region-wide showers, but, it's a little late for the wheat crop.
So with that as the backdrop, how far along are you in cutting?
Well, we are, I would say the southern part of the county is pretty much cut out. We had a rain come through on Friday night that slowed everybody down. It ranged in the county anywhere from 0 to 1,500s all the way up to 2 inches. So depending on where you're at, you may still be sitting. But I would say Wichita County's, I'm going to throw a number out there of about 60 to 65% cut right now.
And you wouldn't turn your nose at that rain.
No. Everybody was happy to take a day off for that rain. A few guys were, in the southern part and the northern part of the counties were still able to go, but for the most part, they were happy to take that day off.
Well, in that you're more than halfway done now, what sort of read are you getting on yields and test weights?
I've heard anywhere from 15 bushel to all the way up to, a good, I'd say, number on dry land in there. I've heard a lot of 35 to 45 bushel. And then I've heard a couple guys say that they've jumped up on dry land up there close to 50, 55 bushels. So irrigating numbers, I haven't heard a lot there. Just don't have as much irrigated wheat as we used to. So I haven't heard much on irrigation. Mm-hmm. Test weights, it's all over the board. I've actually seen tickets of a couple guys pushing 62 pounds, but I've also heard a lot of guys cutting 52, 54, 56-pound wheat. So protein, they're again all over the board, anywhere from 10 up to, I've heard, 14. So, it's just, I think it's all on your production practices, if you fertilize, if you got some moisture and variety, so a little bit of all of it.
Having said all of that, and given the rather grim start to this crop and the subsequent dryness in the spring, are your producers looking at this harvest as unexpectedly successful, given everything?
Oh, definitely. And Eric, we caught one of those late freezes, so guys were really scratching their heads, wondering what kind of wheat they'd have. I went out and looked at some wheat, didn't find a whole lot of damage, but then I talked to other agents in neighboring counties or crop consultants, and they were finding lots of damage. So I think it was a very much pleasant surprise on how this wheat's turning out.
And you've roughly 40% of your harvest to go, so a few open days will allow a good share of your producers to knock that out, presumably.
Oh, definitely, Eric. I'd say by July 4th, guys will be putting machines away. They'll be done.
Hey, thanks for the update. We always appreciate it, Alan.
Thank you.
He's Alan Baker, Extension Agricultural Agent in Wichita County in far west central Kansas. And now we move back toward the central part of the state and find out how harvest is going in two counties, Russell and Ellsworth counties. They make up the Midway Extension District, and the Extension Agricultural Agent specializing in crop production there is Craig Dinkel. So, Craig, have you made any progress in cutting to date to speak of?
Oh, yeah. Harvest really got kicked off in Ellsworth and Russell counties probably last Thursday, June 25th, and, we've had pretty good harvest weather since then, so I'd say we're sitting probably about 50% completed at this point.
So, for those who have cut to date, what sorts of yields and test weights are you finding out about?
Well, test weights have kind of been running on the low end. I've heard about 55-pound test, and the high end's kind of been running towards that 62-pound test weight. it kind of seems like for the most part, been hearing a lot of that 58 to 60 pound range has been kind of the normal sort of test weights running. Yields are very across the board. It seems like the either continuous cropped wheat or double cropped after soybeans, kind of in that 20 to up to 40 bushel range. Or some of fallow acres kind of been running that 40 bushel range all the way up to 70 bushel range. And pretty common, I think, for the most part, kind of hitting that 45 to 55 bushel will be kind of our average.
It was variable so far. You've a half a harvest to go yet, as you say, Craig. Is it pretty much as producers had anticipated, or have they been surprised one way or the other?
Well, I think the producers in the southeast part of Ellsworth County have been pleasantly surprised with their yields. That's, I say, where the, kind of the better yields I've been hearing. But for the most part, I think most guys were probably expecting this about that 45 to 55 range this year with everything, all the factors we had thrown at this wheat crop with, the freeze and dry weather in the spring.
When would you anticipate the harvest would wrap up? And you say you're about halfway through. Given a full week of open weather, or relatively so, with these hot conditions, will it move along quickly?
Oh, yeah. I think we'll see everything probably wrapped up by first of next week or middle of next week.
Craig, very well. Thank you. We appreciate the input.
Yep, no problem.
Craig Dinkel with us. He's the crop production agent for Extension in the Midway District, which is made up of Russell and Ellsworth counties, and telling us about harvest fortunes so far there on today's Wheat Harvest Update for you. We'll return with more on Agriculture Today.
Social distancing slows the spread of coronavirus, so if you have a fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going in. More info at coronavirus.gov. Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
This is Agriculture Today. Stop, look, and listen.
Maybe the farm is a dead end.
That's Gus Vanderhoeven of Kansas State University with comment on life in rural Kansas.
It would not be so bloody funny if it wasn't funny. Actually, I should say interesting and a challenge. Last week, the brome was cut, and even though it didn't look as good as I wanted it to look, it seems to be a good crop. There are plenty of big round bales standing in the fields. It's good hay. The warm scent of a good hay is a pleasure. They got it all cut, cured and baled, and even part hauled off, except the last field. The joke is we can't get to it. The county road on the north side is overgrown with hanging trees. The big swather can no longer make it through. Oh, I'm sure they can bust through, but I don't blame them for not even trying. Farm equipment is not cheap, but a broken or busted machine is worse, especially when there's much work to be done, making hay. And there's not only the overgrown road with a few leaning trees, but the other thing is the bridge. It's a very narrow bridge with no railings, and that actually is a good thing, which makes it easier to cross with swather and combine. It has been several years that we grew wheat or soybeans, and the last crop was oats prior to the brome. But we always held our breath when the combine crossed the old bridge, and then the trucks hauling the wheat to the elevator. It always worked, but now many years later, and with the one corner undercut by the stream, the operator was very concerned to drive the swather across it. The old crossing across the creek on the farm has steep sides, and the creek had worn down lower. is a side arm of the creek feeding into McIntyre from the eastern hills. All along that arm of the creek, trees are tumbling and sides are eroding. Driving down the old narrow crossing would possibly tip the swather. Not a good thing. So we still have acreage to cut, but so far have not been able to get to it. Of course, a bulldozer or skid loader will do the trick. But the road has been an issue for some time, and especially the old plank bridge. When Harry called me and spoke of his concern, I said I would check with county office. I know there are the powers to be, as a few years ago I sat down with the public works director and with my neighbor who runs cattle on fields across the bridge. It was an interesting meeting, at which we were told that it had been proposed to close the road and remove the bridge, as its upkeep was too expensive. Hallelujah. That was a few years ago, and nothing has been done. Nor did we ever hear any more of the proposal. Of course, we cannot do without that bridge. And the proposal to build a new road in from the east would also be a hellish expense and a much longer maintenance. We said, no way. We need that bridge. A new road would add several miles to getting in and out, as well as a steep grade which would erode. So remember, this is a county road and a county bridge. Admittedly, it's not a highway leading into town, but we do pay taxes, and I am assessed for production land, which I surely do not want to turn into farm wasteland. Where it becomes funny to me is that all this was discussed a few years ago, and in the meantime, nothing has happened. To me, it feels like bureaucracy. After several calls made, I received the bridge report. The bridge was safe for the posted weight of 5 tons. That's good news. The next time we cross, we won't close our eyes or pray. We will just trust. Also, as far as the overhanging trees go, a work order had been made, and a crew would take care of it early this week. Yesterday, no crew had been yet. In the past, I've pulled and cut up fallen branches on the roads near the farm. I'm willing, but I'm not paid for it. All said and done, we should be able to get to our last big hay meadow. If only the weather will cooperate, and I trust it will. After all, this is Kansas. I wrote a thank you letter to the director, not an envious job he holds. In the last paragraph of my thank you note, I mentioned the need for upkeep of Bennett Road. I drove it the other day. The weeds were truck window high, with a few friendly musk thistles nodding their purple heads. The old feedlot on the south side of the road produces an annual crop, quite colorful. Bennett Road is also a dead-end road, with now deep erosion gullies, making the drive in and out, especially with a load on that side of the farm, challenging. With 2 dead-end roads along the farm, maybe the farm is a dead end. The trouble is, it surely is no dead end for me. We have good grazing and are growing good hay. But we must be able to get to it. You know, I love that land.
Gus Vander Hoeven of Kansas State University with his weekly commentary on life in rural Kansas. And that closes out today's edition. Once more, we remind you to take advantage of our podcast service. That works in a couple of ways. You can listen to a replay of each day's broadcast, as those are archived on the site, or you can arrange to have this broadcast automatically downloaded to your mobile device each day for listening at your leisure. The place to go for all of that is agtoday.net. That's agtoday.net. In the meantime, please be back right here with us tomorrow, won't you? Until then, Eric Atkinson bidding you a good day for Agriculture Today. This is the K-State Radio Network.